the group leaders set out to break me and the other 19 guys that were in the program with me. We carried 300-pound logs hundreds of feet down to the lakefront, where we were instructed to build a raft large enough to float with all of us standing on it. And were then told to paddle it a quarter mile out into the lake and back. But we were never able to actually get the raft to float with all 20 of us on it. Despite the fact that we used at least 40 logs, we did have a great time getting to know each other while singing Jack Sparrow by Lonely Island and yelling, "Wilson," at the top of our lungs while playing the ball. The rest of us, of those first 2 weeks, were spent doing maintenance around camp, running and taking classes in wilderness first aid and lifeguarding. Despite the fact that our schedule was grueling, we were going to bed after midnight and getting up at 5:30 to run and then have personal devotions. I began to realize the importance of setting aside time for God in my day. I was exhausted, and I hated getting up at the crack of dawn so that I could ultimately have, at minimum, an hour to read my Bible and pray. But as those 2 weeks wore on, I began to realize how important those times actually were. In the waking hours of each day, I sat atop a hill in an Adirondack chair watching the sunrise over the lake, and it was during these moments that God really spoke to me. These personal encounters with God continued as our group moved into the second stage of training, which included 2 weeks of hiking in New York's High Peaks Wilderness area. The first week of our trip was extremely fun. Our knowledgeable counselor took us throughout the heart of the mountain range, including a hike up the largest mountain in New York and a climb up another mountain before sunrise. However, the real fun began during the second week, when 4 other guys and I were thrown back into the mountains by ourselves. No counselor this time. Keeping in mind that we were all 17 and 18, we definitely had our struggles, especially one night when darkness was closing in and we still hadn't found our campsite. Thunder was ripping through the woods around us, and I was pretty sure that any minute we were going to get sick. This situation was exacerbated by the fact that our leader for the day, 17-year-old Matt Wilcox from Virginia, had sweated so much that he soaked right through his shorts, drenching the only map we had and making it almost impossible to find where our campsite was. Tempers flared and emotions ran high as we all assumed that we would be sleeping out in the open in the pouring rain that night, with no food. At the last second, however, we were able to pull it together. Splitting into 2 groups, we sprinted down the trails in the area for 10 minutes before finally locating the campsite. We then threw up our tents, made a quick meal, and dove inside, just minutes before the ominous cracks of lightning turned into torrential downpour. The rest of the summer flew by. After coming back to the camp for a few days, the group headed off to Canada for 2 weeks of canoeing in Ontario's Algonquin National Park, and then finished off the training by spending 2 weeks as assistant counselors with 12 and 13-year-old campers. My time as assistant taught me a lot about responsibility and leadership, but the most impacting moment of my entire summer came during my time in Canada. When our group had canoed for a few days and had reached the heart of the national park, our counselors sent us off to our own isolated areas for a 3-day solo and fast. I was one of the last people to be sent off and barely managed to make it to my site before nightfall. I scrambled to set up my rain tarp before bolting into my sleeping bag for what was to be the longest night of my life. The unseasonably warm Canadian weather, combined with my 32-degree rated sleeping bag, was stifling. Not to mention the fact that as soon as the sun set, the thousands of mosquitoes lurking in the woods, just waiting for me to fall asleep, began their night-long assault on me. The woods hummed like a NASCAR race, and I spent the first moments of the next morning dumping hundreds of dead mosquitoes out of my sleeping bag. Overall, my solo was an extremely impacting experience, and one that I will never forget. As I sat in solitude on my shoreline, I had a lot of time to reflect on my life and my walk with God. While I can't point to any one experience of my solo in which I felt the greatest change, I will say that the second night was extremely special for me. 2 of my counselors canoed by as the day was approaching its end, and silently tossed a packet of letters to me as I sat on my small rocky beach. As I opened them and began to read, first one from my pastor, and then one from my mom and my dad, I read of my early childhood, of when I refused to walk at all until I could make it all the way across the room, and of how I refused to ride a 2-wheeled bike until I could do so without falling. I read of how much my parents cared about me, and of what they saw for me in my future, and of the hopes that my pastor had for me. And indeed, I would be remiss if I did not mention the letter that Grandma wrote to me. Grandma, I love you, but I do believe that you were slightly misinformed about the point of these letters. Amidst all of these tear-jerking reflections of my life, past and present and future, your letter spoke of my sister's swimming lessons, my uncle's new boat, and the unseasonably hot weather in Maine. However, I would like you to know that your letter was still extremely meaningful to me, as were all of the 5 letters that I received then. Upon returning from Deerfoot, I became determined to stop wasting my life. I decided that I had spent too much time doing homework and working to maintain my grades, and not enough time with my friends, family, and more importantly, God. I think that my relationship with my brother Seth has probably been the most impacted by my experience at Deerfoot. As little kids, we used to fight all the time. I was admittedly a sore loser, and being the continuously competitive brothers that we were, we definitely had our fair share of conflict. However, when I returned from Deerfoot, I was determined to make the most of my remaining time with Seth, something that I am extremely thankful that I have done. Seth, you've turned into a brother that I can joke around with and have fun with, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that we've gotten closer over the last year. Another area of my life that saw improvement when I returned from Deerfoot was my piano work. After reading the biblical story of King Midas and the talents, I came home with a renewed desire to not waste my ability to play the piano. Throughout high school, but especially now, the piano has been something that's extremely important to me. It had been a way for me to express myself, and an area of my life in which I believe I have a gift. Having taken kinder music from Miss Rachel Durstein at age 3 and starting piano lessons with her when I was a youngster in kindergarten, she has become someone who has had a profound impact on my life. I remember getting easily frustrated, almost to the point of tears, when I would learn a majority of a piece of music only to realize that my hands were too small to reach specific notes. However, Miss Rachel always found a way for me to play the piece, or at least make it sound close to what it was supposed to sound like. Had I had an unsympathizing or less patient teacher, I'm not sure that I would have stuck with the piano up to this point in my life, but we always found a way to make things work, to push through parts I thought were impossible, and to ultimately perform the piece. Playing the piano is something that I hope to continue to do in college and for the rest of my life. And now we arrive at my senior year. Looking back on it, it seems like such a blur. Some of the most special moments for me have been our Arts Day performance of Paradise by Coldplay. I don't think I've ever quite felt the chills I did that night when Tyler Hoover, Devin Bernie, Troy Haltman, Jay Cook, Charlie Frank, and I took the stage for our public performance. It was an incredible experience. I'm also not sure if I will ever have that many girls screaming my name, all holding up signs saying, "Hallmark Wesley, I love the pianist again." Our volleyball team was able to make it back to state playoffs for a second year in a row. We managed to take one game from the #1 ranked team in the state and push them point for point in another. My friend group started going to breakfast together on Thursdays, the core participants being Tyler Linnell, Nate, Troy Castle, and myself, with occasional guest appearances by Devin and Ashley, Caitlin Krantz, Darren, Troy Haltman, Cusick, and Michaela Gaiman. I made district choir and was able to have a great time singing with both my friends from Dock and other students from Souderton, North Penn, and other area schools. And I took faith law class, in which I was not only able to share some of my story with my classmates, but was also able to grow closer to a number of people in my class that I probably wouldn't have known otherwise. Another experience that I'll probably never forget, no matter how hard I try, was my time with my baby from Family Living, Oprah Joy Simpson, otherwise known as O.J. Simpson. For those of you who don't know, this class at Dock requires students to spend 36 hours caring for an extremely realistic computerized baby. Just thinking about caring for this child stressed me out. And when the day for little Oprah came to be turned on, I was ridiculously protective of her, even to the point where I wouldn't take her out of her car carrier or let my sister assist me with her care. After spending a long night caring for her and being woken up every few hours, I entered my last few hours of the simulation, which would conclude at the end of the school day. Up until lunch, the day had gone off without a hitch. Despite the fact that Oprah needed a diaper change during a crucial part of my AP English in-class writing exam, I was doing relatively well with her. And then there was lunch. As part of the Student Service Committee, I was obligated to attend our bi-weekly meeting in Gilman Hall, a fairly short walk from the cafeteria. However, after getting my lunch, I was faced with the almost impossible situation of carrying both my tray and the little Oprah at the same time, to the now seemingly distant Gilman. You can imagine my satisfaction when I found that I was able to clip the baby into my hoodie and proceeded to exit the cafeteria, smiling as I carried my tray and my elaborate clip system supporting Oprah. That was when it all went wrong. The bell rang and students streamed down the sidewalks towards the lunch lines, and that was when my clip system decided to snap. Oprah fell to the ground and immediately started screaming her fake little lungs out as I desperately tried to console her. All the while, the entire student population passed me, giving me looks that said everything from, "That's hilarious," to, "You awful person, you just killed your." Needless to say, this was not a pleasant experience for me, but at least I didn't drop my lunch. Moving beyond that horrifying experience, this year has been an incredible year for me. I can look back on it and see growth in myself as a person, both spiritually and mentally, and it in fact has been one of my favorite years of high school. Coming into high school, I knew what I believed, but not why. I knew my goals, but I had no idea how I could accomplish them. And I had a vision of the person I wanted to become, but I had no idea how I would become that person. While I am still looking for answers and striving to continue my growth as both a person and as a student, my ambitions and beliefs have become much clearer than they once were when I walked into Dr. Bishop's class as that short 100-pound freshman. In the fall, I will be attending DeSales University as a medical studies major, with the hopes of one day becoming a physician's assistant. Being some sort of doctor has always been a dream of mine, because of my experiences with sports injuries, and because of my desire to help and serve others. The DeSales motto reads, "Be who you are, and be that well." I have no doubt that my experience at Christopher Dock has helped me to discover who I am as a person, and I would like to say thank you to all my teachers, friends, and family who have helped me along the way. I could not have done it without you guys, especially my parents, my brother, and my sister. Mom, thank you so much for your support and patience with me over the years. Your notes every Monday morning have helped to ease the stress of a new week, and we both know that if you hadn't helped me stay organized, well, let's just not go there. And Dad, you've been a great role model for me over the years, and going to college and watching a sports game on TV without someone constantly yelling at the players and/or refs is going to be a big change for me. Thank you all for coming